I'm 26 male, married to my wife 26, and we're expecting our first baby. I'm estranged from my paternal side of the family after my father had an affair while my mother was dying and their willingness to try and defend his actions. While Mom was sick, he left me to care more for her while messing around with someone else. He even brought said other woman to my mom's funeral. His family also tried to get my mom to forgive before it's too late while she was still alive. It was a nightmare. I was 15 and it was a lot. Mom needed to be cared for and I was the only one who could when my aunt had to work. After my mom died, I moved in with my aunt. My father married the other woman and invited me to the wedding, but I didn't go or even acknowledge the invite. I had nothing to do with any of them. I heard he died last year and it was no concern to me. I also found out he had 2 kids. His other woman, second wife, died 4 months ago. My paternal grandparents took the kids in, but they didn't feel like they could raise 2 preschoolers or whatever age they are. They mentioned me to a social worker who approached me and asked if my wife and I would be willing to raise these kids. We said no. The social worker noted it and said they wouldn't approach me again. My grandparents haven't given up and contacted me and my wife both over this. They tried to use guilt trips and sob stories about foster care being horrific for kids, and one is a little girl, so it's even worse. None of this changed anything for me, and then they tried getting my aunt to talk to me. They showed up at her house with the kids and appealed to her as a former foster kid. She and my mom both were. She told them to get the heck out. I ended up talking to them over the phone instead of ignoring their messages. We talked. They told me after they went to my aunt's house, they'd spoken to the social worker again and now the kids are in care. They asked me how I could be okay with my siblings being in care. I said I don't care that their grandkids are in foster care. They're nothing to me, and I will not pretend I care about saving them. I said they need to accept the kids are now in care, and a social worker will work on finding them a good family, but they need to accept that I will not be that. They called me a monster and said I should be ashamed of myself, and they hoped the birth of my child would bring me nothing but guilt. Am I the idiot? The reason I might be the idiot is the kids were innocent of everything and I am a biological relative who could have taken them if I wanted to. My wife would have been supported if I'd wanted to, but I didn't, and I was very harsh with my grandparents who are elderly. Not the idiot. Actions have consequences, and your father's actions sadly impacted the lives of all 3 of his children profoundly. You have no obligation, morally or legally, to raise someone else's children. If they're so worried about it, they can raise them and pay for extra help. I'm so sorry for the loss of your mom. I know that never truly goes away. Your grandparents need to contact all of the extended family on both their side and your stepmother's side to try to find a family member willing to take on the children. From what my aunt was told, nobody else wanted them. My father's siblings all made excuses. His wife's family had nothing to do with her for many years before she died, and they didn't want anything to do with the kids she left behind. My grandparents were the only ones willing, so they took them temporarily. This is actually the kind of situation that appeals to foster to adopt parents. Parents are dead and the extended family isn't able to take the kids, so reunification isn't on the table. Frankly, they really could be adopted in 6 months or so, depending on your state's timeline. I have a feeling your grandparents are just as unwilling to take in the kids as the rest of the family and only took them in temporarily because they were convinced they could convince someone else to take them in. They don't care about those kids either. OP, your grandparents supported your cheating father who abandoned your dying mom and his 15-year-old child to care for her. They are now choosing to put their grandkids into foster care. These are choices they made out of their own free will. You are not obligated to support their choices. I, 58 female, have 1 daughter, Clara, 28. Clara never went to university because she said it wasn't for her and that it would be a waste of money. Clara is now engaged. She told me she wants to go to university before they have kids, so she has a backup plan if something goes wrong and she's left with nothing. She said her plan is to go to university for 3 years, we live in the UK, to study psychology, then she'll have kids and be a stay-at-home mom immediately after she graduates and use her degree if she ever needs to. I asked why psychology, and she said it seemed like the easier degree to make a career out of. The problem here is she wants me to pay for it. I'm about to retire and I don't want to pay for her degree that she likely won't ever use. I'm also skeptical about how valuable a degree will be for her if she has no experience working in that industry and got the degree long before she has to use it. I told her I'm not rich enough to pay for a degree that likely won't be used. and she should have a conversation with her fiancé about what they'll do if they split up after she's been a stay-at-home mom. I even suggested she and her fiancé pay for it together, but she said they'll need to save all their money for having kids in the next few years. I said I needed to keep my money for my retirement and not waste it on a degree she doesn't plan to use or has a passion for. She said I was being unfair to her and that I should be worried about her being left destitute if her fiancé left her one day. I said she should be putting all the money she makes now into an account for herself and creating savings or investments in case anything happens instead of making me spend thousands of pounds on a degree she probably won't ever use. She told me not to expect her to have me as part of her family anymore when I don't care about her future. Am I the idiot? Edit, she worked odd jobs for the first few years, but she's been a yoga instructor since she was 22. Honey, no, that ship has sailed. I'm saving so you don't have to fund my retirement. If I funded your college, I would require a payback contract. You're 28. It's time to grow up. I love you. She is 28. Old enough to have gone to school and graduated. Old enough to have a stable job and save. Old enough to be considered an adult. There's no reason for you to pay for her choices. Your priority is you. Do not pay. You are not the idiot, she is. Yeah, I wonder what her fiancé thinks. They haven't gotten married and she already anticipates him leaving her. She's almost 30. Her demand is unreasonable, and the fact that she's threatening to cut you out if you don't give in paints her as very manipulative. Do not cave. She's being ridiculous. She'll change her mind when she needs free childcare from grandma. OP, a bachelor's in psychology is completely worthless. The only thing that would be more worthless is a 10-year-old psych degree without experience or continuing education. No wonder she doesn't want to use her own money for her degree. She knows it'll be a waste of money. Just curious, who does she expect to pay for the wedding? My wife visited her sister 2 weeks ago and left me responsible for her plants. She has a bunch of potted flowers, succulents and cacti on the balcony and in the backyard. She's very attached to them and calls them her babies. I'm not a big fan of plants, but I promised her that I would water them every day. However, I got distracted with work and other things and completely forgot about the plants. When she returned yesterday, she was horrified that some were wilted, dried out or dead. She got furious and accused me of being irresponsible, careless and insensitive. She said I don't respect her hobby and that I don't care about her feelings. She said the plants were important to her and I should have been more attentive. I apologised and explained that it was an honest mistake, but she didn't want to listen. She's been giving me the silent treatment since then and refuses to speak to me. She said she'll continue to do so until I make things right. I think she's overreacting and being dramatic. The plants are cheap and easily replaceable. She can buy others like them or even better ones at the gardening store. I don't understand why she's so upset over something so trivial. I know I messed up by forgetting to water the plants, but I didn't do it intentionally. They're just plants, not people. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. She asks you to do one favour while she's away and it slips your mind, not just once or twice, but for 2 whole weeks. It's not about the plants, although those matter and are not simply replaceable. It's about how your wife is so utterly unimportant to you that you can't spare a single cell of your brain to do something small to help her. And there's no doubt in my mind that this is not the first time you've demonstrated this. I'm also unsure if you paid attention to plants because cacti and succulents don't need to be watered every day, or if you also didn't pay any attention to the specific instructions she gave you about which plants to water, and if you had remembered, you would have murdered the succulents with overwatering. To add to this, many people with lots of plants have some that were given to them by people they care about, like a cutting of a Hoya from your mum's plant or the lily bulbs I have from my great-grandfather's garden. Just because they're not an expensive variety doesn't mean they're low value. Not to mention all the time and effort she's put into her garden. Dude, you had one job. One. I'm glad you weren't responsible for caring for pets or children. Sorry, honey, I forgot to feed the kids for 2 weeks, but no biggie, we can make new ones easily, right? LOL. You broke your promise to your wife and now you're calling her dramatic and her feelings trivial. Right about now, your wife is thinking you are cheap and easily replaceable. She can get another spouse just like you, or even better at the gardening store. My son Corden, teen, is a wrestler and struggles with being bipolar and bulimic. He's been in therapy since last year after his mom and I started getting a divorce and he wasn't taking it well. Things got so bad that he had to quit wrestling after his coach caught him throwing up in the bathroom. So far, Corden seems to be doing better and is on meds that seem to work for him. He even started wrestling again this year. His mom got engaged to the man she had an affair with last month, and since then Corden seems to be slipping again. I'm pretty sure I've heard him making himself sick, and he's been in a bit of a funk after he quit talking to one of his teammates. After one of his therapy appointments, I spoke with his therapist about my concern and how I could help more if I felt Corden was sinking again. He kind of slyly told me and my ex that maybe he might be scared of coming out to us and he had a bad breakup. Luckily, Corden was waiting in the car and didn't hear that. I was furious, not because my son is gay, but because he didn't get to tell me himself. I cussed his therapist out on the spot and told him how unethical it was to tell me what he and Corden had talked about in outing a teenager. I threatened to report him after he said he was trying to help us. Later, my ex tells me she thinks I overreacted and that maybe it'd be good to be in the know without Corden knowing. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. What that therapist did was irresponsible. If they did this to someone with phobic parents, they could have put the kid in great danger. This needs to be taken seriously and reported, as this may not be the first time this has happened and may not be the last. The therapist should have talked with your son about finding a way to open up to you safely. They have destroyed all sense of trust your son had in them and likely undone a lot of work. It would be best if you found a new therapist for him. Oh my God, I wish more parents were as fast as you to call out how horrendous and dangerous it is to our kids, particularly those still dependent on their families. Of course, the cheater thinks hiding things and manipulating people is fine. The value of her opinions on ethics and morals is less than that of words. Don't pay attention to your ex's opinion. You look after your son's well-being, reassure him he's safe with you, and you love and support him no matter what. A licensed therapist here? That is wildly unethical and illegal, and I would recommend reporting this breach of confidentiality. Your state will have a Behavioral Health Board website and there's a link on there to report issues. You can also use this to look up their license number if you don't already have it, as that would be needed. Your son's therapist is a huge idiot. He's taken such a beautifully sacred conversation from your son. I'm absolutely furious on behalf of your son. I, female 23, work in tech. We have a large office of about 50 people. Many people here are used to working from home since the global issue, so the dress code at the office is pretty casual, jeans and jumpers mostly. I was really worried about integrating with an actual office, but it's been really chill so far. The only problem has been Beatrice, who has worked in offices a lot longer than many of us younger workers. Beatrice is in her 50s and still tries to act like the queen bee of the office. We mostly just ignore her advice and try to get our work done. She has an array of complaints about any number of things in the office, but chief among them is how cold the office is. We work in a southern part of the country and it approaches 90 most days, so everyone in the office is fine with the AC being set at 72. With the strong fans in our office, it often feels cooler. Beatrice tends to wear low-cut cardigans and pullovers and no bra. This will be important later. She constantly complains about how cold it is in the office, even though we all tell her to put on an extra layer. One day in the lunchroom, she said I must be lucky not to feel the cold with my extra layer of blubber. I have a little extra fat, but I'm working down after struggling with an ED. This really stung me, and I said maybe she should stop dressing like she works at Hooters if she wants to stay warm. She walked stiffly out of the room. My co-worker told me she heard her crying in the bathroom. I feel bad for making her cry, but I also felt offended, and she implied only a fat person could be comfortable in the AC. I dress reasonably. Edit, she's made multiple comments about my outfits not fitting. I'm MTF transgender and I cannot wear all the outfits in my wardrobe perfectly. Not the idiot. She insults you on your weight and you fire back with an absolute gem and she gets upset about it. Beatrice was stirring the pot and you just handed her the spoon and made her take a taste. She needs to learn to take it if she's gonna sling it. I'm concerned that OP doesn't seem to realise that, as satisfying as her response at the moment was, it was 100% the wrong way to go in an office setting and could bite her in the butt. Both will get in trouble. HR doesn't care who started it. A harassment accusation? That's big league. They 100% would be required to investigate and take action to reduce liability. They can't risk being a company that looks the other way. A hostile work environment. That's reality. Yeah, you'd probably both be in hot water at any professional organisation right now, but comparing the two statements, I get a slap on the wrist for mentioning someone is fat. If I told a woman she dressed like she works at Hooters, I'd be fired for sure. Probably that day. So everyone's the idiot here, but OP was actually way more unprofessional. You're both professionals. You need to act like it. If there's a problem, take it to HR.